Welcome student. Today I am going to discuss a new topic, preprocessor and preprocessor directive. In the previous lecture we had discussed about the enumeration in C, where we have seen that we have used the enumeration for the naming constant of integer constant, right? And we had also compared with the macro, because if I use the macro, why we use the enumeration. So in the previous lecture I have discussed why you use the enumeration. So in this lecture we will mainly concentrate on preprocessor and preprocessor directive, where I will discuss about the macros also, macro expansion. So first, what is preprocessor? What is preprocessor? A preprocessor is a system software. It's a system software, or you can say it's a program, computer program that is designed to run on computer hardware and application. It performs preprocessing of high level language. Preprocessing is the first step of the language preprocessor system that is used by the compiler, right? So language preprocessing system translate the high level language to machine level language, or you can say absolutely machine code, so that it can be understood by the machine. So we know the compilation process. We have a source program, whatever written, that program will be treated as a source program, or you can say it's a high level language, right? And that high level language, during the compilation process, this is the first step of preprocessing. Preprocessor already mentioned that preprocessor is a system software. It performs pre-processing of high level language. So now what does mean the pre-processing? Pre-processing. So before a C program is compiled in a compiler, a source code is preprocessed by a program, is called preprocessor. So what does mean the pre-processing? What are the tasks of preprocessor? There are mainly three tasks of preprocessor. First one is removing comments, second one is file inclusion, and third one is macro expansion. So there are mainly three tasks of preprocessing. So what does mean we are removing comment? Removing comment, we already know that we have used in several program. We are already familiar with the command line, right? Say command line is written only for the human beings, or only for the human to understand it, the code, what is the meaning of particular line. So it is obviously that they are not used to a machine. So preprocessor remove, first task is to preprocessor remove all of them, as they are not required in my execution and would not be executed at all. So this is the first task of preprocessor, and we have already used the simple program where we use the first statement is has include stdio.h. So you can see from this example also. So here I have written a simple program to calculate the area of a circle. The first statement is has include stdio.h, right? So this is the, so in this example has include stdio.h. So it means has is a preprocessor comment actually, right? So command used in preprocessor are called preprocessor directory, and all preprocessor directory start with hash symbol. So it is, later I will discuss about the preprocessor directory, for what are the different type of preprocessor directory are available in our C program. So right now hash include, hash is the first symbol, starting symbol of any preprocessor directory, right? So hash include means, it means the include all the files from library to our program needs. Here in high level language, this is my high level language, we can say source program. So in high level language we write hash include. which is a directive for the preprocessor that tells it to include the content of the library file specified within the angle bracket, or also we can use the double quote, right. So the task is the preprocessor to include the content of the specified file. So hash include will tell the preprocessor to include all the content in the library file stdio.h. We already know the meaning of stdio.h, standard input output header file, because here we are going to use the printf statement, printf function. We are also going to use the scanf function. So those function has been written in our header file called stdio.h header file. So because it's related to input output operation, so all the function of printf, scanf function, or we can say function body, we are already familiar with function, the body has been written in this header file. I am just calling this function, or we are just using this function by passing some argument, right. So this is the second task, or we can say second task of preprocessor, right, in the preprocessing. And third one is we have a macro expansion. So third task is macro expansion, right. So what does mean the macro expansion? For example, we have write a simple program where you use hash define. Hash is a we already know that hash is a preprocessor directory start symbol. Hash define, then pi is a as a identifier, and which get the value 3.142, right. So this is another way to expand the macro. I will discuss in details when we talk about the preprocessor directory in details about the macro substitution. Right now you know that this is the another task of preprocessor, right. So what do you know? We have written a source file, and that file will be finally will convert to a machine language. Though this is the first step of preprocessing. After that, the compilation process is happening. Compilation after the pure high level language will be converted to a relocatable code, and then that code will be fed into the assembler, and I will get the assembly language, and then loader or linker, whatever it is, that part will be converted to a machine code or locatable code that will be executable, right. So from this diagram we can know that the preprocessor is the first step of preprocessing of high level language that is used by the compiler. That output will be used by the compiler, right. So the preprocessor is a macro processor that is used by the compiler to transform your code before compilation, and so that's why it is also called the macro preprocessor directory, because it allows us to add the macros, right. So now moving to the what does mean the preprocessor directory. So first, preprocessor directory, these are the statement, right. So these are the statement, and which begin with a start symbol. What is the start symbol here? Hash is the first start symbol, and it is placed in the first column, and they are placed before the main function. Look at that. So whatever I have just written, hash define, hash include stdio.h, hash define pi 3.142, so that is placed just before the main function, right. And there will be no semicolon at the end of such statement. There are no end semicolon. So look at this, hash include stdio.h, no semicolon is here. Hash define pi 3.142, so this is not a semicolon at the end. So we can understand these two are belongs to preprocessor directory. Okay, and every preprocessor directory start with the hash symbol. This is the first symbol or starting symbol. So what are the different type of preprocessor directory are available? Mainly there are three type of preprocessor directory available. First one is, we can say, macro substitution, substitution directory. Second one is file inclusion, Third one is conditional compilation directive, conditional compilation directive. First one is macro substitution. So this is the process of replacing an identifier of a C program by a constant or a symbolic constant. So let me write the syntax so that you can understand what is the meaning of macro substitution. So you are already familiar with hash define. In my previous example I have discussed about this one, hash define pi 3.142, right. So at the end there is no semicolon. So I told you that, as I mentioned, this is a macro substitution. So let me write the syntax so that you can understand what does mean the macro substitution right now. So first is, we have to use the starting symbol, that is hash, then we have to write as define, then there is a space between the identifier and define. And after that we have to use any constant or any expression, that is for example CSC. Now compare with the previous one. I have used hash define pi. So let me write once again so that you can understand. Hash define pi, then I have used 3.142, right. So let me compare with these two. First one is, this is a macro substitution. So first we have to use the preprocessor directory symbol hash define, right. Then there is a space between an identifier and hash define, and there is a also space, at least one space between the identifier and the memory constant. Now compare with, here pi is a identifier and this one is a symbolic constant. So in my syntax, first we have to write the hash define, then we have to give the identifier. Identifier is a any valid C identifier, or conventionally we use or write the capital letter, or we can say in uppercase we can use. And third one is maybe a constant, here the value is constant or fixed, right. So maybe a constant or any expression or any symbolic constant we can write at the end, but at the end there is no semicolon. Okay. So what does it mean? It means that whenever in my program where this sim identifier is used, so for example in this example I am going to calculate the area of a rectangle, right. So area of a rectangle I want to calculate by using hash define pi. Okay. So pi, it may be any symbol, any name you can give, it's an identifier. So we know that what is the if I want to calculate the area of a circle, so pi r square, right. So pi r square. So I have used the r means radius. So I have used two variable, one of the variable is radius, another variable is area, and both variable are floating, okay, float type variable. So and here use printf and scanf statement, printf statement to give the message to the user to input the value of the radius, and that value will be read by this scanf statement, and it will put this variable assign this variable radius, right. And we have write area equal to pi into radius. So whatever the value has been given by the user, that value will be replaced by this variable. For example, if I give the value 2.5, that value will be replaced during the calculation, right. So here radius 2.5, radius 2.5. Here I have used the pi as a macro substitution. So whenever in my program where the pi symbol is present, that value whatever assigned in the right hand side, that value will be replaced by in this program. So here the pi will be replaced by 3.142. Even in my program, whenever the pi occurs in C program, it replaced by the value 3.142 and many times. So what is the advantage? One times I am declared the value of a variable, and every time I am just using this variable. So that is called macro substitution. That is called macro substitution. So we will see more example. So you can write, for example, anything you can write. For example, has defined marks, 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 for example 100. So whenever in my program, if I see any identifier name is marks, that will be replaced by this value 100, right. Even you can write any name also. So for example, if I write has defined, that is name, and the name is, for example, C programming. I am writing C programming. C programming. So whenever in my program, if I got a identifier name, that will be replaced by C programming, right. So that is macro substitution. You will get so many other example, more than one example in tutorial also. Class note, please follow the class note to get the more details in example. So that is macro, all about macro substitution. And the second one is file inclusion. File inclusion, right. Second one is file inclusion. File inclusion. So you already know that in my program I have used has include stdio.h. I have just mentioned earlier that it is also a process of inserting external file containing function, macro definition into the C program. So this avoids those function or macro definition rewriting, right. So has include directory, the syntax is, first we have to write has, then include means I am going to include this file, then we have to use the file name, right. And we can write the file name different way. We can use, for example, in my example I have used has include and has include stdio.h, right. I have, let me take another, write another example, has include math.h, okay. Even we can also write by using, instead of third bracket, we can also write in this way, has include stdio.h within double quote. Even you can write, for example, has include fact.h, okay. So we can use double quote or we can use angle bracket, but there is a difference between the using angle bracket and double quote. Whenever the file name is written within a pair of angle bracket, it means that a specified file is such only the standard directories, right, only the standard directory. But if I use the double quote letter within double quote letter, so it means that file first search in the current directory, then in the standard directory. So that is the difference between the angle bracket and double quote. So you can use one of them, mainly we will use the first one. So we can use one of them, no problem, that, but you have to keep that in mind, the file should be written on that current directory, right. So we can use angle bracket, alternatively we can use double bracket. So no other meaning of this syntax. So you can use any of them. and third one is macro conditional compilation directive, right? So conditional compilation directive. So before that I have to take some examples so that you can understand what is the meaning of it. So let me write some example of has, if, def, has, else, has, elif, has many more, end if. So these are the example of conditional compilation directive, right? Conditional compilation directive. What does it mean actually? In C, preprocessor provide a conditional compilation, right? So which is used to select the alternative segment of the code in C program to depending upon the condition. So for example, if I write in my main, if I write, so I am just writing the example, not details, whatever there are so many line are there, and after that I have write if define, for example, version 1, then this is the code of version 1, code of version 1, right? Else this code, right? What does mean? If this condition is satisfied, this condition is has defined satisfied, so so this portion of the code within this bracket will be executed or compiled. So what means that we can overcome the problem of simply including the both version of this code and that code, this code. So one of them we can compile, we cannot go for the second one. So these are the available compilation directive, so where we can compile one of them based on our requirement. So for example, if define macro, so conditional code will be there, and here the conditional code are included in the program only if the macro is defined, this macro is defined, okay. As we can use if also, if and end if also, else if, end if, so you also use, you can use if, for example you can write has, if, then any expression, and then this is the conditional code, then we can write end if. So here the expansion is a expansion of integer type, it may be anything, the code will be include only if the expression is evaluate to a non-zero value, means if the condition is true, then this portion of the code will be included, right? Otherwise it will not include in my directory. So we can write if, else, end if in this way, right? We can write if, we can also use as if, then this is the expression we can write, then this is the code if the condition is satisfied, and else, right, like this we can write else, and this is the condition if the expression is, this expression is false, then else part will be executed, and we can write end if. So it means that I want to say that we can compilation of directory based on some condition. So we can provide any kind of condition. So there are so many examples are available. So I have used if def, else, else if, we can write also has, if and def, we can write also have, has, and def directive, okay. So we can use many example of compilation directory, conditional directory, these are available. So that all about the preprocessor directory, where we know what does mean the preprocessor, how it is work, right. So what is the main function of preprocessor? Mainly three function: removing comments, fine inclusion, and macro substitution. These are the three important function of a preprocessor. And I have discussed about the so many directive, preprocessor directive, macro substitution, we have used the find inclusion, and third one is lastly I have discussed about the conditional compilation directory. These are the example of conditional compilation directory, and we have used hash include stdio.h, hash include mat.h. We can also say hash include, we can use the angle bracket, we can use instead, we can use the double quote also. If I use the angle bracket, then we have to only search from the standard directory, and if I use the double quote, first the searching will start from the current directory, then the standard directory. Okay, that about the file inclusion. And conditional directory, we need that we can include some part of the code based on some preprocessor directory. These are the example of conditional directory, and that's all about the preprocessor directory. We are already familiar with the preprocessor directory because we have used in my program several times hash include stdio.h. We have also used in my program has defined pi 3.14. so we can write any name constant. For example, use the marks 100, or we can use any name to replace the name during the execution of a program. Anywhere it is in my program, if it is available, then we have to replace with this, so in the program. Okay, so that's all about the preprocessor directory and preprocessor in C programming. And in next lecture I am going to discuss about the dynamic memory allocation, where I will discuss about the malloc, calloc, realloc, free function. So what are the important of dynamic memory allocation, I will discuss in my next lecture. Thank you.